We changed the locks, Sloan. Declan needs the house to himself this weekend to entertain his new girlfriend, and we do not want to make things awkward for him. Just take the leftovers on the porch and go back home. You understand, right? That was the digital text message glaring back at me as I stood freezing on the concrete welcome mat of my childhood home. A plastic Tupperware container of cold scraps sat at my feet like a bowl left out for a stray dog. From inside the warmly lit house, the sheer, ringing sound of my family laughing pierced right through the frosted glass. They had locked me out, literally and figuratively. Little did they know, that pathetic plastic container would become the exact blueprint for their ultimate destruction. Thank you for watching this video. Before I take you back there, do me one small favor. Take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. My name is Sloan. I am 29 years old, and I work as a senior healthcare auditor. In my family, I was never truly considered a daughter. I was the unpaid maid, the permanent backup plan, and the designated emotional scapegoat. My younger brother, Declan, was the undisputed golden child of our household. He was the crown prince, and my parents worshipped the ground he walked on. I simply cleaned it. From the moment he was born, the entire gravitational pull of our family shifted entirely to his demands. If Declan had a minor baseball tournament, my birthday party was completely canceled. If Declan wanted a brand new vehicle for high school, my college tuition fund was quietly drained to accommodate his luxury. I was what my mother called the easy one. But let me tell you the dark truth about being the easy one. If you are the easy one, you are not a human being. You are a convenience. You are the designated prey, the emotional sponge meant to absorb their immense stress so their golden child could shine entirely unbothered. I survived my childhood by making myself incredibly small. I earned a full academic scholarship, moved away for university, and tried to maintain a relationship with the people who shared my blood. I spent years believing that if I was just accommodating enough, they would eventually love me. That profound illusion was completely shattered on a bitter Thursday in November. I was 22 years old. I had requested time off from my entry-level job months in advance, spent a significant portion of my meager salary on expensive holiday gifts, and driven for exhausting hours through a punishing winter storm just to eat Thanksgiving dinner with my parents in Richmond, Virginia. When I finally pulled into the driveway, my hands were entirely numb from the cold. I walked up the steps, put my familiar silver key into the front door, and pushed. It did not turn. The lock was entirely different. It was a brand new brass fixture, completely unyielding. I stood on the porch for 3 agonizing minutes, assuming someone had simply made a mistake. Then my cellular phone vibrated. It was the text message from my mother, Brenda. They had changed the locks. Declan wanted privacy with his new girlfriend. There was no room for me at the dining table. I looked down at the freezing concrete. Resting on the welcome mat was a cheap, plastic Tupperware container filled with leftover turkey and cold stuffing. Taped to the lid was a yellow sticky note. It read, "Happy Thanksgiving, Sloan," followed by a hand-drawn smiley face. The sheer audacity of that smiley face completely paralyzed me. I could smell the rich aroma of roasted meat seeping through the door frame. I could hear Declan's booming, arrogant laughter echoing in the hallway. I did not scream. I did not pound my fists against the heavy oak door. I picked up the plastic container, walked back to my vehicle, and drove 4 hours straight back into the dark night. I did not eat the food, but I kept the Tupperware. The very next morning, the obedient, desperate daughter died, and an entirely different woman was born. I did not announce my departure. True power is utterly silent. I requested an immediate corporate transfer to a branch located in Salt Lake City, Utah. I forwarded my mail to a private post office box. I changed my phone number, deleted every single social media profile I possessed, and completely erased my digital footprint. I packed my meager belongings and drove across the United States. I did not leave a forwarding address. I simply vanished into thin air. For 7 years, I built a magnificent empire of my own. I clawed my way up the corporate ladder to become a senior healthcare auditor, a profession that requires meticulous attention to detail, a talent for catching liars, and absolutely zero tolerance for excuses. I purchased a beautiful home nestled in the snowy foothills. I fell deeply in love with a man named Vance. Vance is a middle school history teacher, a man made of solid earth and warm hearth. He became my safe harbor, the protective shield I never had growing up. My parents attempted to find me for the first 2 years, but when their efforts became slightly inconvenient, they completely gave up. I was entirely at peace. I thought the ghost of my past was gone forever. I was completely wrong. 2 months ago, my healthcare firm finalized a massive corporate acquisition of a smaller medical compliance company. As the senior healthcare auditor, I was assigned to lead the mandatory integration and training sessions for the incoming analysts. I opened the electronic onboarding roster on my laptop to review the new hires. My blood ran completely cold. I was entirely frozen in my office chair. Sitting neatly on the 4th line of the spreadsheet was a name that made my stomach aggressively violently turn. Declan. Relocating from Virginia to Utah, the predator had somehow tracked its prey across the country. My initial instinct was absolute, staggering panic. I wanted to resign from my lucrative position, sell my beautiful house, and run away all over again. When Vance returned home that evening, he found me sitting in the dark, entirely devastated. I broke down and told him the complete truth about the Thanksgiving incident, about the Tupperware, about the profound humiliation I had buried for 7 years. Vance did not offer empty platitudes. He sat beside me, his presence immensely grounding. What outcome would make you feel entirely safe? Vance asked quietly. Not what is fair, but what makes you feel safe? I looked at the life I had built. I looked at the walls of the home I owned. I want to handle this like the woman I am today, I whispered. I do not run from my own empire. Monday morning arrived. I wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit like physical armor. I walked into the corporate training room with absolute authority. The new hires were gathered around the conference table. I heard his voice before I saw him. Declan was complaining loudly to a female colleague about the quality of the complimentary coffee in the lobby. He sounded exactly the same. Entitled. Arrogant. Utterly insufferable. I stepped up to the podium and turned on the digital projector. Good morning. My name is Sloan, and I am your senior healthcare auditor. I will be overseeing your compliance integration for the next 6 weeks. Declan's head snapped up. The absolute horror that washed over his features was a masterpiece of human panic. His meticulously crafted mask slipped entirely. His face drained of color until he looked like a terrified ghost. He was staring at the sister he had thrown away like garbage, but he was seeing a corporate judge holding the executioner's axe. I looked directly into his eyes, completely unbothered, and began my lecture. He ambushed me in the hallway during the afternoon intermission. He stepped out of an empty alcove, attempting to deploy the charming, vulnerable facade he had used to manipulate our parents for decades. Sloan, oh my God, he stammered, his eyes welling up with forced, theatrical tears. We have been completely devastated. Mom and Dad have been utterly terrified. You just vanished. Why would you do that to us? I did not flinch. I did not lower my voice. I looked at him with icy precision. Right now, I am your senior auditor. The corporate compliance session resumes at 1:30. Do not cross this professional line again. I turned on my heel and walked away. Declan was absolutely furious. He was entirely unaccustomed to being denied access to his designated prey. When he realized I would not submit to his emotional manipulation, he immediately changed his strategy. He began spreading insidious rumors around the office water cooler. He played the tragic, heartbroken brother who had miraculously stumbled upon his deeply troubled, estranged sister. He framed my professional distance as cruel and unusual punishment. He wanted to force my hand through public corporate humiliation. Then he committed his fatal mistake. He illegally accessed the corporate personnel database, extracted my private residential address, and provided it to our parents. It was a Friday evening. Vance and I had just returned from the grocery store. As we pulled into our driveway, a silver rental vehicle with Virginia license plates was parked directly in front of my meticulously manicured lawn. The doors opened. Brenda and Gary stepped out onto the concrete. They looked older, slightly more fragile, but the sickening aura of absolute entitlement radiating from them was completely unchanged. "Sloan," my mother wailed, rushing toward me with her arms outstretched, deploying her favorite weapon of public guilt. "How could you be so utterly selfish? How could you abandon your own flesh and blood? You know how sensitive your brother is." My father stood behind her, his chest puffed out in a pathetic display of patriarchal authority. "You are going to invite us inside right now, young lady, and you are going to apologize to your family." Before I could even open my mouth, Vance stepped seamlessly between me and the people who had shattered my childhood. He was a towering, immovable wall of calm. "If Sloan wishes to speak to you, she will make a formal appointment," Vance stated, his voice completely level, but vibrating with immense, lethal warning. "You are currently trespassing on private property. Return to your vehicle and leave immediately, or I will have the local authorities remove you." My parents were completely paralyzed. No one had ever spoken to them with such absolute, unapologetic authority. They stammered, their faces flushing dark crimson with profound embarrassment, before retreating to their rental vehicle. They shouted the name of their local hotel out the window before speeding away into the dark. The next morning, I drove alone to their hotel room. I knocked once. My mother opened the door eagerly, assuming I had come to beg for their forgiveness. I stepped into the room, but I did not sit down. I stared at the two people who had systematically destroyed my youth. "I did not come here to reconcile," I said, my voice as cold as a winter storm. "I came here to deliver a message. Do you remember the Tupperware container?" My mother blinked, her brow furrowing in genuine, horrifying confusion. She did not even remember. The worst trauma of my entire existence was merely a forgotten Tuesday for her. "Thanksgiving," I continued, my words striking like physical blows. 7 years ago. You locked me out in the freezing cold so Declan could have more space. You made your golden son an extravagant feast, and you left your daughter a pathetic doggy bag on the concrete with a smiley face drawn on it." The memory finally registered. My mother's facade crumbled completely. She physically collapsed onto the edge of the hotel bed, her hands flying to cover her mouth as she began to violently sob. "I did not leave to hurt you," I said softly, looking at my father who was now staring at the carpet, utterly silent. "I left to survive. You will pack your bags. You will return to Virginia. And you will never approach my home again." I walked out of the hotel, leaving them completely shattered in my wake. But the war was not over. Declan, infuriated by his failure to bring me to heel, decided to play what he believed was his ultimate trump card. On Monday morning, he filed a formal grievance against me. I received an urgent email from the Director of Human Resources, summoning me to a mandatory corporate tribunal on the 7th floor. When I entered the mahogany boardroom, Patricia, the Human Resources Director, was sitting at the head of the massive table. Declan was sitting across from her. A smug, venomous smile played on his lips. He had submitted a lengthy manifesto claiming I was intentionally creating a hostile work environment, subjecting him to emotional abuse, and discriminating against him due to an undocumented family vendetta. He expected me to be fired. He expected me to be the sacrificial lamb, just like I had always been. But he entirely forgot what I do for a living. I am a senior healthcare auditor. I do not operate on emotion. I operate on irrefutable evidence. I sat down, completely calm, and opened my leather briefcase. I did not defend myself against his emotional fabrications. Instead, I withdrew a meticulously organized, 300-page legal dossier and slid it smoothly across the polished wood table toward the director. "What is this material, Sloan?" Patricia asked, adjusting her glasses. "That is a comprehensive forensic audit of Declan's digital corporate footprint since his employment began 14 days ago," I stated, my voice entirely icy and devoid of any human sympathy. It includes documented proof of his unauthorized access to confidential employee databases, multiple egregious violations of federal compliance standards, and irrefutable digital timestamps showing he stole proprietary corporate data to locate my private residence for personal harassment. He is not a victim of a hostile work environment. He is a massive corporate liability. Declan's smug smile completely shattered. His face was entirely drained of color. His jaw dropped open in absolute, staggering horror. The predator suddenly realized he had just walked blindly into a federal-level snare. Patricia rapidly reviewed the highlighted documents. The corporate atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Her demeanor turned completely hostile as she looked up at my brother. "This is a direct, undeniable violation of our corporate security protocols and federal privacy mandates," she stated coldly, closing the file with a sharp, echoing snap. "You are being placed on an immediate termination track, Declan. You will surrender your corporate identification badge, and corporate security will escort you from the premises immediately. We reserve the right to pursue further legal action regarding the data breach." Declan was completely paralyzed. He looked at me, his eyes wide with profound, desperate terror, silently begging me to save him. I simply stared back at him, utterly silent. I let him drown in the exact same cold silence he had forced me to endure for 2 decades. He was escorted out of the building 10 minutes later by 2 armed security guards carrying his belongings in a cardboard box. His career in corporate compliance was utterly destroyed before it even truly began. My parents were forced to purchase him a last-minute airplane ticket back to Virginia, returning their disgraced golden child to the exact same childhood bedroom he had never truly outgrown. 7 years after they left me on a freezing porch, I am sitting in the profound warmth of my own beautiful home with a man who loves me unconditionally, while they are completely trapped in a miserable house with an unemployed, entitled dependent who will slowly drain their retirement accounts dry. I have built an extraordinary life of absolute peace that absolutely none of their money or favoritism could ever buy. In my kitchen, hidden securely on the top shelf behind the expensive ceramic mixing bowls, sits a cheap plastic Tupperware container. It is washed, clean, and completely empty. I keep it there as a permanent trophy. It reminds me that I was once served absolute scraps, and instead of starving, I used them to build a kingdom where I will never go hungry again. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members to protect your peace? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them. If you found my journey empowering, do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Take care of yourselves.